Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you about the new features in OTR 2.3. I'm really excited to share these with you, so let's dive in. To begin with, when you installed OTR 2.3, you probably noticed the Orchestral Tools Extras folder included in the installation. So that particular folder comes with its own guide. I'm not going to go through all of the specifics of that in this particular video, but what I do want to highlight is that Orchestral Tools has partnered with OTR, and we are now able to offer a lot of the flagship libraries such as the Berlin series, the ARCs, and contact libraries such as Glory Days. We're able to offer track presets, rearticulate banks for this, v2.3 Ensemble Pro server files. There's a whole lot that is out there for you to just kind of comb through. I think you'll like a lot of that. I'm going to show you how some of that is integrated from the beginning, and I'm going to use those templates to actually show you some of the new features in OTR. So to begin with, I'm going to go up to the File menu, and from the Project Templates folder, you're going to see I've got a few more things in my template than you may have. I've got my personal templates and such. But you'll see that you will have options for Orchestral Tools, Berlin Orchestra Berkeley package, and then you have one for the flagship sign libraries. I'm going to open the Berkeley one just for simplicity here. I'm going to hit no. And you'll see that the library has already been set up inside of an OTR project template. The tracks enter in a disabled state, and all we have to do, if you own the library, is enable them, and we're able to start playing right away. Assuming you own this, for example, what will happen when you click on the track, I'm going to hit the Activate shortcut. You'll see that there is already a set of articulations mapped out. The plugin is already set up on the track, and you're ready to just start making music from the get-go. If you don't own it, you're not going to be able to have any sound play, but you will still see the rearticulate articulations down the side. Now, something that's really cool about OTR version 2.3 is, if you know anything about OTR, you'll know that the visibility toggles are something that is a huge enhancement for composers' workflows. When you're dealing with thousands of tracks inside of a project, you want to only view certain aspects of your project. I have some of these shortcuts, for example, set up to buttons on MIDI controllers. So if I wanted to just view, for example, or toggle on and off the strings, you'll see that the first section goes away, the second section goes away. I can toggle off everything with a button press and just view each of the sections that I want to view. Toggle them back on. Something else that has been added in OTR, that's been there for a while, but one of the things that has been added to OTR now is on the global visibility toggles menu bar. There are a lot of new, I think it's 13 new options. You can filter tracks by name, show tracks only with media included on them. You can collapse all the folders, collapse folders, but then open the ones that have media on them, which is really cool. So you'll see all the folders in your project collapsed except open for the ones that have recorded data. You also have this ability to show active tracks, show inactive, show frozen. And just to give you an idea, if I click show active, the only track that shows up is this violins track because that's what we activated. If I wanted to show inactive, we don't see that violins 1 track because it's active, right? We don't have anything frozen in the project, but that would show from that perspective. I can click show all to reset. There's a hide all. And then if you're using v2.3 Ensemble Pro server setups, there's also the ability to show active v2.3 Ensemble Pro tracks, inactive, and frozen. So these are all extremely helpful. I do want to go into the filter tracks by name. So by default, when you click on this is I'm going to call it a static search. And what that means is when you type something in this filter, and we'll type in something like bass. If we have to click the button, filter tracks, and it will show us just the tracks we want to see. By default, it has the strict filter enabled. That means that it's going to be looking for words that specifically have bass in it. If we turn that off, It's going to bring in a few other oddball tracks that maybe have a B in it, or a high level of B and A and then SS. So all of those things are going to be part of the filter. But like I said, by default, strict is on. That's probably what you're going to want. Hit filter tracks. We can hit reset. We're good to go. By default, OTR includes a dynamic search feature as well. Depending on how large your template is, this may or may not function as smoothly for you. It still works really well in 1,000 track templates. When you start getting much higher than that, there's going to be a little bit of lag as it's searching. But the general idea is on Mac, you would hit Command F. Just translate that over to your Windows keyboard shortcuts. But the Command F function will bring up a very similar search filter, but it actually starts the search as you type. So B, A, S, S. And you can see what shows up. Now this searches category tracks and their children. So for example, the base track itself is meant for electric basses or bass category. And there are none in this particular project because it's all an orchestral library. But you can see how that is a really handy feature. So we're going to just reset the view and we're good to go there. One of the other features you can do with this filtering approach is also select tracks along the way. And this is something that's really handy if you have MIDI tracks that you're trying to import into a project that you want to move them to specific instruments. And you may have a lot of MIDI tracks and you want to kind of whittle down your multi-thousand track template to just the ones that you need to use. And so the way that you do that is basically just make sure you have the tracks highlighted that you want to continue to include in the search. So for example, this doesn't necessarily have a practical use as I'm demonstrating it, but it will show you how this works. I'm going to highlight the oboe 1 and oboe 2 tracks. Then I'm going to come over to the filter and I'm going to type in bass. You can see as I'm typing this, the oboe tracks are already included. Let's say that I now want this bass clarinet. So I am going to click on that. And then let's just back out of this filter. You can see that the tracks that we selected are still highlighted. And now let's say we want a viola. Maybe both of them. So let's select, I'm holding command to do multiple selections. Let's do command on the violas and the solo viola. Let's reset the view. And then let's also do, let's say trumpet. And then let's say we want the trumpet ensemble. Now, I just hit the wrong button in that particular case. I hit control instead of command, so I did lose the selection. This is a good demonstration. If I continued to type, I would lose any other filters. So what I want to do is I just want to make sure if you ever lose a selection, you just click and highlight what you want and then keep on going. So back to, I'm not sure if there's a flugelhorn in this. There's not. Or harp. There we go. And then let's reset the view. And you can see that those are the selected tracks. And, you know, from that standpoint, we've got all that we need. Again, just keep typing. If you just type a letter or so, something that you know is not in there, you can see that it just filters down to those tracks you have selected. So that's really cool. All right, so there are a couple other things I want to show you in a larger template, but this gives you an idea of how to use the filtering functions within OTR version 2.3. Just for perspective, I do want to open up the larger flagship library templates, so project templates. Okay, so you can see in this, there are a number of track folders. This particular project template has, you know, in the string section, you have each of the different Berlin string products offered by Orchestral Tools. And then you also have the string parts from each of the Metropolis ARC libraries. Those have been broken out. We'll get into track templates in a minute. There is a full track template for Metropolis ARCs 1 through 5 proper. So when you add that in, it could have all of the tracks from Metropolis ARC in that folder. But with OTR's traditional setup, we want to make this as efficient as possible, so you're able to just add the important sections as well from those product libraries. One of the features we were talking about earlier are the collapse folders, and collapse plus open the ones with media. I want to demonstrate that really quickly, so let's just open up a few tracks here.
So we've opened up a few folders.
Okay, so we've opened up a few folders. These are disabled. It doesn't matter if they're disabled or enabled at this moment, but let's also just add in a few items along the way. So let's put one on each of those. So this gives us some active media. Now to do that, I just clicked I where the cursor is, and it will insert it in. OTR also includes some new shortcuts to make it to make Reaper feel a little bit more traditional in its usability. So much like the MIDI editor, you can actually just drag the mouse now, and it will create items in the arrange view. So that's kind of like creating notes in the MIDI editor. I like that feature a lot. So what we're able to do, if we hit the collapse folders button up here at the top, that's going to close everything. If we hit collapse plus open the media, you can see that out of all the folders that we had, only the folders that had the media are opened. Now, that means it's going to open up and expose all the tracks, even if they don't have media, just because one particular track does have media. So that has a very specific use compared to show tracks with media. Show tracks with media, if we click on that, just brings in the track with media on it and its parent track. One of the other functions that or features that has been added to OTR, and it seems like it would be simple. There were a number of steps that had to be implemented to make this happen, is a simple way to navigate up and down on the tracks. If you hit up and down on the keyboard now, you will navigate through each of the different tracks, regardless of if they're hidden or not. So that's really cool. So starting on this category track, we just hit the down arrow, and it shows the visible tracks, and that's what matters. It also, one of the other features is if you use the left and right buttons on a selected track, you'll select the MIDI items. So that's really handy. If you hold shift and hit right, it's going to highlight them all. If you hold shift and hit left, it's going to select the first one. Again, shift and right, shift and left. If on the track view you hold shift and hit up, it's going to select the first visible track. Shift and hit down, it's going to select the last visible track. So if we show all the tracks, shift up, shift in, shift down, you can see shift down has selected the last track. You would think that would be a common feature, but it's a little bit more challenging when you have a really complex template, because you may be hiding a lot of tracks along the way, and you only want to see certain visible tracks, their parent folders and such. So there were a few more steps to make that, to implement that, but I'm excited that that is there. Okay, so we've covered OTR global visibility toggles. Let me tab through a couple of these. The regular visibility toggles for category tracks did not change. That was what I was hitting on the keyboard or on my MIDI controller for being able to turn on and off specific sections. So for example, the strings or VIC1, turning it on and off, right? If you have a key command set up for showing all and hiding all, again, that's on one of my MIDI controllers. I just hide them all and just turn on and off the ones I want to see. Track lane visibility, I don't believe anything was added to that one. There were some edits made to some of the scripts. I do know that. So they'll function a little bit, behave a little bit better. One of the other cool features is this find and replace button. The UI is not fantastic. It uses, I believe it's an SWS script. So if you want to quickly rename tracks, you can highlight some tracks and hit find and replace. And then we're going to replace the word arc with just something to demonstrate this. And you can see the track names have changed. So that's really cool. Toggle track VI outs. That is not going to do much in this particular template, but you'll know that some of the track templates do contain VI outs. They're stereo returns from the plugin. Traditionally, in OTR, you'd have to show all the VI outs or none at all. Now you can select a MIDI track, the parent instrument track. It doesn't really matter which track you're selecting, is going to find the related VI outs and show those. So you can toggle those on and off. So that's really cool. The other features are just the standard features from previous OTR releases. Mix utilities, I just added a shortcut for cleaning the directory. That, if you know in Reaper, once you've been recording quite a while, your directory can build up with takes that you may not want. So that's just an easy feature to do that. Okay, and then navigating on over, the Rearticulate Management bar. Now you'll notice this has two new features. One of these is currently active, one is not. Within the toolbar up here, you'll know that clicking the first button will give you an add new Reabank window. So you can see that with the new function, or the add new, you get to choose from OTR related templates to pre-populate the form. You don't have to use those. You can just build one from scratch if you'd like. But the general idea is if you don't want to do all the physical setup of this, this kind of gets you going in the right path. You will see that there is a new from existing. And while new from existing is based off of the previous releases, we're going to get into the orchestral tools specific aspects of this release. You are able to use the orchestral tools banks now, and any other bank that you've created to be able to use as a template to build from. We'll get into all this in a minute, but basically what this means is that the orchestral tools, Reabanks that are included, won't be overwritten. You can do essentially a save as function of it. Edit works as expected. You're not going, like I said, you're not going to be able to edit any of the OTR specific track templates, but you will be able to edit any template that you have set up in the editor. So if you've imported it into Rearticulate's Reabank file, it's not going to show up. If it's defaulted, if it's a default track template from OTR, it's not going to show up. But if you've created it within the OTR Rearticulate editor, then you can edit. Deleting is as you'd expect. Okay, so getting into the last two buttons. So this particular button that looks like a pie, when you click on it, it just tells you that there's a new feature coming. With the expansion of default templates that are going to be in future releases of OTR, I just wanted to alert users that there's going to be an easy way to update the OTR factory banks. This is different than Rearticulate factory banks. These are banks that have been designed specifically for the track templates and projects in OTR. And then lastly, if you want to bring your Reabank file up to version 0.5, we'll just call it 0.5x of Rearticulate. Previous to 0.5, Rearticulate used MSBs and LSBs, which are program numbers inside of the file to designate the identity of an articulation bank. In Rearticulate version 5, it no longer uses those. So if you have historical projects that have those numbers assigned to it or use those Reabanks, you still need to keep them in there. But if you're trying to overhaul an existing Reabank file and want to make it consistent with version 0.5 moving forward for Rearticulate, what you could do is you can click on this red little explosion, and it's going to warn you because this will be very destructive to your Reabank file. But there are reasons to do this. That's why it's included. It will go through and it will replace all the MSB and LSB numbers with the asterisks, stars, right? So you would lose backwards compatibility with projects that reference MSB LSBs, but you'll gain future compatibility with all of Rearticulate's forward progress in how it uses IDs to be able to determine which articulations are assigned to a track. So just know that that's there. That's important. I'm going to hit cancel. Okay, next features. So you will notice that there are, in some of these orchestral tools libraries, you'll see sometimes a library that has the word complete in it. Berlin Strings Complete. It's not an actual product that's offered by Orchestral Tools, but one of the things that has happened with the design of many of these track templates is while the main products are set up, there has been an effort taken to combine some of those products into one specific track. So, for example, when you click on Violins 1, and I'm going to go ahead and activate this track. All right, Violins 1 from the complete setup, let me zoom out, has all the traditional articulations from the main library, but it also, after we get through these scale runs, you're going to see it contains the special bows. I'm just scrolling down this list on the right side. And it's also going to contain the FX articulations as well. You will need to own all those libraries, but essentially what has happened, I'm going to load up Sign Player so you can see what's happening. All of the different library banks have been added to this multi. So from the FX section, you have the glissando, and you have the standard FX added. Special bows, you can see that you've got the soltastos and such. And then a number of these others, ornaments, dynamics, longs, and shorts, those come from the main library. So you will see the complete reference throughout. One of the other things you'll notice too is that these libraries will not necessarily use all the default setups from Orchestral Tools for the mappings of mic faders and such. So just be sure and rearticulate to read the info at the top of the track, and it will tell you what all's going on. There is a pretty standard mechanism that's been used. It's discussed in the OTR manual and the Orchestral Tools Extra manual. Okay, so one of the other features is track templates. So in OTR 2.3, I'm just going to click on a random category here, and then I'm going to go to Insert Tracks from Templates. You will see that there is a new Designed by Orchestral Tools folder. Ignore the developer and master, those are mine. And then these other OTR folders, those are specific to you as well. So you'll see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, and then you'll see the 6th one. The Designed by Orchestral Tools, you will notice, as I discussed before, you'll have things like Berlin Brass Complete, which combines the main and the muted. You also have Berlin Brass Main, and then you'll also have Berlin Muted Brass. As I'm scrolling through these, you probably are noticing the local Ambient Ensemble Pro setups. Those are set up to either host the plugin on the track itself or have the plugin be hosted in Vienna Ensemble Pro. You do have to own Vienna Ensemble Pro, and it's designed out of the box for preserved decoupled states, which means you're going to have the projects loaded that accompany those files from the Extras by Orchestral Tools folder in OTR. Again, discussed in the manual. But, for example, if we load in the Vienna Ensemble Pro, you'll see that the icons say VE. If you activate the track, it's got the Vienna Ensemble plugin on it. It is not connected. You'll have to manually connect those. You'll also notice that there are MIDI CC warm-up files on these. And if you know your way around CC warm-up files, you'll be familiar with the event list design, and you're able to kind of see that CC22 and CC23, which for the sake of all of these libraries would be the close mic and the true mic are set at 90. That's the default setting in Sign Player for the volumes. And then it goes ahead and sets the mod wheel and expression controller to 127. So you can design those as you wish and then save these track templates. But the point here is that you have VN Ensemble templates, and then you also have, as I was saying before, the local templates. Additionally, OTR 2.3 has added a number of virtual instruments. You will now see that there are mostly VSTI 2 and 3 versions of almost all the instruments that are available. I did add an Addictive Drums 2 setup, which is pretty cool. Let's drag that one down into a drum section. So drum kits, open it up, and you can see that this one has been set up so that all the outputs route to kick, snare, hat, tom, and you can mix it as if you had recorded the drums naturally. There are also the different synchron players that have been added. Sound Paint's been added. There are versions of these for all the Rearticulate, to have Rearticulate hosted on the plugin by default. If you are not sure about these different variations, I did add a more detailed walkthrough to the OTR 2.3 manual, so you can go through that. And let's see. I guess one thing I'll discuss before we get out of this section is what I do with my templates after they have been connected to a server for VN Ensemble Pro. I like to save those in a way that I don't ever have to worry about connecting again. So what do I mean by that? If you connect the VN Ensemble Pro server instance to the track and you disable the track, it appears as disabled within the project template in Reaper and saves CPU cycles. To VN Ensemble Pro, it appears disconnected, so it's not using any CPU resources. And so those are two really wonderful things. And then what I like to do is save the track template for example, let's just say Berlin strings, right? So I'd have violins 1, violins 2, violas, cellos, and basses all connected, disabled, save that as a track template. So the next time I bring it into a project, all I have to do is enable it. It automatically connects, and I don't have to worry about the connection process. What that looks like in my templates, I didn't expect to kind of go through this in this walkthrough, but for the Design by Orchestral Tools section, this lets you choose where you're connecting. There's no way for me to have defaults for that. I'm not going to have any idea how you have your VN Ensemble Pro server set up. But once you do connect those, you can save them. The way that I do it in mine, I'm just going to click over to the Master Template section, and I go through, and all of my libraries follow the exact same folder structure. It's probably a little bit more complicated than you want, or it might not be, who knows. But what I do is I have folders for each of my track categories. So this mirrors my project template. So orchestral strings, solo strings, winds, and such. That looks exactly like the category tracks and the stems on my master template. And then within that, I've got all of my different libraries. And so, let's see, from a developer side, let me go to the developer side first, because then I can show you what I've been doing with the orchestral tools libraries. I set them up as connected and disconnected. And in the disconnected version, these guys basically look just like the default orchestral tools VN Ensemble Pro setup. The connected versions, I have a naming structure that says VE3, which that's saying it's on my VN Ensemble server that is number 3. So I've got them named VE1, VE2, VE3, VE4. So it's on VE3. PD is preserved and decoupled. Man, my brain's running slow. So preserved, decoupled. And then AE is activated within OTR and enabled on v Ensemble Pro server. So those two letters delineate if the track is active in the project and if the instance is enabled or disabled on the server. Almost all of my templates follow AE or DE, which means these are active tracks, these are disabled tracks. But I do have them set up so that if I want to change this around, I can have multiple variations. If I ended up hosting, for example, Berlin Brass on a different server, and the reason these are in developer, actually, that's a good reason to explain that. I was rearranging my template before I made this video. And so these are all set up on the servers that I've been using for a while. These, the orchestral tools libraries, I have been shuffling around to different servers and trying to figure out the best performance in my studio. And so to do that, I've got to save the track templates, connect them, and such. And so each of these are being assigned. So for example, Berlin Brass, I've got set up on VE3, and that seems to be working really great right now. And then once I lock all this down, I'm going to slide them over into my master templates. So they are all part of my master template today. They just are currently going through a performance decision on which server is best for each of these and how to divide it up with all my other libraries that I have. So that being said, you can see that I've got in all of these, the percussion VE4, active enabled, deactivated enabled. And what will happen if I pull in, if I pull in the deactivated version for Berlin percussion, so let's just drag it on up. I probably already have this in orchestral percussion already, but you can see that it comes with some different subfolders. I'm going to open those guys up, and you have all the different percussion instruments. And if you hit connect or activate, I'm going to simply activate that particular track, and it is connected to the v Ensemble Pro server. So that covers just about everything except for the visually impaired screen prompt section. So one of the great things with OTR version 2.3, and this is the last section of this video, and I know it's long, so I apologize, but if you are visually impaired, one of the most difficult things is navigating through a DAW. It doesn't matter which one you've got. So what OTR 2.3 has done, I worked with an amazing composer out of France. She is fully blind and wanted to be able to do all of her music making process without assistance, or with little assistance as possible. And so that meant setting up a template, getting her going with the traditional workflow, but then enhancing it so that all the things that we take visual cues for are now able to be read by screen prompt software. Some of these features I actually implemented into my own workflow because I didn't realize how much the feedback was a wonderful part of this process. For example, right now, if you navigate up and down on the tracks, we visually see it change, right? For someone who's visually impaired, I say we as in, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you can see what's going on. That may be my fault, so apologies if that's not the case. But for non-visually impaired people, you'll see the actual track highlighted. That's a visual feedback function. Screen reading software doesn't see that. So what you have to do is be able to provide prompts that say, the next track has been selected. This is the track name, if that's what the composer wants, things like that. So there's a bit of customization. But where it comes in handy is on MIDI controllers that you may have functions that trigger, maybe record states and things like that. Again, that's really important. If you have no visual feedback, how do you know if you're recording in take mode? How do you know if you're recording in MIDI overdub mode? Those types of scenarios. And so OTR has implemented the screen prompts, and you'll see I just pushed a button on my MIDI controller. I have an Icon Platform Nano that has a lot of recording controls. I don't use it as much for MIDI editing and visual toggles as much as I do just navigating the recording states and things like that. So in this case, I set the record mode to new take mode. Screen reading software will read this back, and it will let someone who's visually impaired know what just happened. I'm going to click off of that. And you can see I'm just kind of toggling through a lot of these options, right? And all those things work out wonderfully. So anyway, from that perspective, let me go ahead and show all my tracks. Okay, so from that perspective, you can see where the Visp scripts are really critical to a workflow for a visually impaired individual. There are a lot of default actions set up. If you go to the show action list and you just search by VISP, you will see a large list of scripts that I have added to this list that now have screen prompts. These are all the ones that we determined as working through a workflow. Again, fully blind, not able to see any visual indication or cues at all. These are the scripts that seem to help her the most, and she was very gracious in wanting to be able to share this with the OTR community. So anyway, wanted to touch base on this. If you are visually impaired or are working with a visually impaired individual and need more assistance with this, I'm happy to help you with that. There is a little bit of customization that you have to do to set up OTR. I've done it. Obviously, I'm really well aware of how to get that going for individuals. Again, it's going to be based on the individual's workflow and what their goals are. So it's not something I can necessarily have an out-of-the-box feature set for. I included, like I said, a lot of the shortcuts out of the box are mapped. Not all of them. Some of them are. And if you have other shortcuts, such as the up and down arrows to select the next track, you know, for example, let me type in select next. So you can see that right now I've got an action for the down button, right? Select next visible uncollapsed track. I also have it set up. You'll see these different Visp tracks, right? And these will allow you to select the next track. They're already set up with shortcuts, but if you want to map them to the regular shortcuts that you might use, you may change these to the, you know, up and down, left and right, things like that. So selecting next track here is currently option 2. You'll know when you go through all the shortcuts, you will see that there is a pretty consistent structure in how they're all set up: first, last, next, previous, where they're laid out on the keyboard. Again, lots of details there, not necessarily something that needs to be gone through in detail in this video. It's already long, but I do want you to know about the features. And I think that about wraps it up for OTR version 2.3. There's a lot more small changes that went on under the hood, new scripts that have been added. Please review the changelog, the manual. There's a lot that's listed there. I hope you enjoy this update as much as I've enjoyed being able to bring it to you. There has been, like I said, a tremendous amount of work involved in this one, and I do think it's going to benefit the community greatly. So thank you again for your continued support with OTR, and don't hesitate to reach out, support@storyteller.im if you have any questions. Hope this helps with OTR version 2.3. Thanks.